Welcome, dear listener. You've arrived at the Sleepy Historian, a quiet corner of the internet where time slows down and the stories of the past unfold in calm, measured tones. This is boring history for sleep. Not boring because the past itself lacks intrigue, but because the telling here is soft, steady, and designed for rest. If you've been searching for falling asleep to boring history, bedtime relaxation, and soft storytelling, or a soft-spoken history documentary, then you're in the right place. Perhaps you've had a long day. Maybe your mind is restless, caught in the tug of unfinished thoughts. Let this moment be different. Let this time be for you. If these quiet journeys through the past help you settle, if they ease you into sleep, then feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. You might even share in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. There's a quiet comfort in knowing others are out there too. Listeners scattered across the world, lying in darkened rooms, letting history lull them gently toward sleep. So dim the lights, if you haven't already. Let the screen glow faintly in the quiet of your room. Let the voice of history soften into the background of your thoughts. Together we'll drift into the rhythms of the past. Tonight, our journey takes us into the world of dreams in ancient Greece. For the Greeks, dreams were not idle flickers of the sleeping mind. They were messengers, warnings, glimpses into the will of the gods. Entire sanctuaries were built where people sought healing through the dreams that visited them. Philosophers debated whether dreams revealed truth or were nothing more than echoes of daily life. Soldiers before battle, statesmen before decisions, lovers before marriage, all looked to the hidden language of dreams for guidance. The world we are about to wander was thick with symbols, signs, and sacred spaces. A world where the boundary between waking and dreaming seemed porous. A world where the rhythm of their lives was guided, not only by the visible and the tangible, but by the fleeting images of sleep. Our exploration tonight will flow gently through 4 parts. First, we will step quietly into daily life in ancient Greece and imagine how ordinary people might have experienced dreams as part of their routine. Then, we will turn to the life of one particular figure, a philosopher whose thoughts on dreams still echo faintly into our world. From there, we'll wander into the mysteries of archaeology and culture, exploring sanctuaries where dream rituals unfolded in hushed reverence. Finally, we will lift our gaze toward the world of the elite, the powerful, and the contrast between common dreamers and those whose visions could shape politics, warfare, and empires. All told calmly, without hurry, so that you may let go and drift into rest. This is not a tale to grip you tightly. It is a story to lay beside you like a soft blanket, a rhythm to ease you gently into sleep. So close your eyes if you wish. Imagine yourself lying on a cool stone terrace in Greece centuries ago. The hum of cicadas rises in the night air. Olive trees cast shadows in the moonlight. The scent of earth, warmed by day, lingers as the world grows quiet. Slowly, the sky deepens into darkness, and you wait for dreams to arrive. Let's begin. Imagine yourself waking in a small Greek household more than 2,000 years ago. The world outside is still quiet, touched only by the faint gray light of dawn. Inside the house, the air is cool and still. You have been sleeping on a simple bed made of wood, with ropes stretched across its frame and a mattress of wool or straw resting on top. The covering is plain, woven from linen or wool, carrying the faint smell of the oils used to soften the fibers. Around you, the room is unadorned, with plastered walls and only a few possessions placed neatly against them. In such a setting, dreams were not simply dismissed as idle fancies. For many ordinary people of ancient Greece, dreams were understood as a bridge between the human and the divine. Waking from a dream might bring a lingering sense of awe, or perhaps unease. Even before stretching or rising from the bed, a person might quietly replay the dream in their mind, searching for meaning. Was that vision of a bird in flight a good omen? Did the strange encounter with a relative already passed away suggest a message from beyond? In towns and villages alike, Families gathered simple stories about dreams and their meanings, passing them down through generations. A mother might gently caution her child to pay attention to what appeared in their sleep. A farmer preparing to sow his fields might remember a dream about the weather, interpreting it as a sign to wait or to begin. In this way, dreams slipped into the rhythm of daily life, not as distant curiosities, but as companions to ordinary decisions. The houses themselves were modest for most citizens. A courtyard at the center often served as the heart of family life. Around it, rooms opened with small thresholds and wooden doors. At night, under the dark canopy of sky, families lay close, often with children and elders nearby. Privacy was limited, and so the whispers of dreams were shared naturally, almost in passing. A father rising early might pause to recall his dream to his wife before stepping out into the streets. Neighbors could be heard sharing similar stories at wells, markets, or workshops. Imagine walking through a narrow street of an Athenian neighborhood. The air is filled with morning sounds. The bray of a donkey, the low call of a vendor arranging his goods, the murmur of women fetching water in clay jars. Among these ordinary tasks, fragments of dreams surface in conversation. Someone speaks of seeing a lion in their sleep. Another mentions dreaming of rain falling in endless streams. Each person nods, considering whether such visions hold weight or whether they are no more than the wandering of a tired mind. The Greeks believed that dreams might arrive from different sources. Some were thought to come from the gods themselves, carrying clear messages. Others were considered reflections of the body, images stirred up by food, drink, or illness. A restless night after too much wine might bring confusing visions, while a night of fasting might be filled with sharper, stranger scenes. Even in the most ordinary households, people paid quiet attention to this distinction, noting whether a dream felt like a true message or simply the echo of the body. Daily rituals often included small acts that connected waking life to dreams. A family might pour a libation of wine to a household deity, quietly asking for favorable visions. In rural homes, the smell of bread baking in clay ovens mixed with incense burned at small shrines, the smoke curling into the air as prayers drifted upward. Sleep, dreams, and waking life were woven together in ways that gave meaning to even the simplest routines. For children, dreams often held both wonder and fear. Parents might soothe them by explaining that certain frightening images were simply tricks of the night, while others could be taken as signs of protection. A child dreaming of a shining figure, for instance, might be told they had been visited by a friendly spirit. In this way, the next generation learned early to notice, to interpret, and to carry dreams into the light of day. As daylight grew, work began. Farmers moved toward their fields. Potters bent over their wheels. Merchants set up their stalls. Yet throughout the day, the lingering impression of a dream might shape choices. A man uncertain whether to travel might remember a dream of rough seas and delay his departure. A woman preparing to weave might recall a dream of tangled threads and wonder if it spoke of coming trouble. Life unfolded with practical labor, but always with one ear turned, quietly, toward the echoes of the night. It is easy to imagine the rhythm, the work of hands during the day, the slow return to rest at night, and the hope that dreams would bring guidance rather than confusion. In the stillness before dawn, when households rested and the streets were hushed, the dreams of Greece whispered like a hidden language across the sleeping city. As the sun climbed higher over the hills of Greece, daily life unfolded in steady rhythm. Yet even in the brightness of day, the memory of dreams lingered quietly in the minds of men and women. Morning had passed into afternoon, but the images of the night were not easily shaken off. Some people believed dreams carried their weight far beyond the moment of waking. They colored decisions, softened worries, and sometimes introduced unease that could follow a person through the tasks of the day. In rural villages, where the land itself dictated the course of life, dreams often carried agricultural meaning. A farmer waking from a vision of fertile fields might work with renewed energy, encouraged that the gods favored his planting. Another, dreaming of storms and floods, might proceed cautiously, delaying his work until signs from the earth matched the visions of the night. The earth was central to existence, and dreams were seen as one more way the natural and divine worlds spoke to the people who depended on them. The rhythm of such a life was shaped by the seasons. In spring, dreams of growth and rebirth carried special resonance. In summer, dreams of fire or dryness might warn of hard months ahead. During harvest, dreams of abundance or emptiness weighed heavily, as they were thought to hint at whether the stored grain would last through winter. Imagine, for a moment, a villager walking between olive trees at midday, pausing to recall a dream of falling leaves, wondering if it carried meaning for the season to come. Within towns and cities, the relationship with dreams was equally present, though sometimes expressed differently. Artisans, shopkeepers, and craftsmen carried their dreams into their workshops. A potter might mutter about a dream of broken jars as he shaped clay, touching his work with more care than usual. A shoemaker might recall a dream of a journey, wondering if it meant travel was ahead for one of his customers. These thoughts were rarely shouted aloud, but quietly folded into the fabric of labor. Dreams also shaped the small rituals of personal life. A young woman preparing for marriage might place offerings at a small shrine, hoping her dreams would reveal signs of her future happiness. Families mourning the loss of loved ones often looked for their return in dreams, believing the departed might reach across the veil of sleep to visit. For them, a dream was not just imagination. It was a visit, an encounter, a fleeting touch with someone no longer in the waking world. Food and diet, too, were believed to influence dreams. Physicians and healers in the Hippocratic tradition sometimes suggested that rich meals or heavy wines disturbed the balance of the body, producing troubling or confused dreams. Simpler diets, lighter fare, and moments of fasting were thought to clear the mind, allowing dreams of greater clarity. Imagine sitting at a simple wooden table, eating bread, olives, and cheese. As the day waned, you would be told that such modest meals would open the door to dreams more easily understood. Dream interpreters existed in many places, though they were not always professionals in the way priests or philosophers were. Sometimes they were older members of the community, respected for their wisdom and their memory of stories. A neighbor might bring a dream to such a person, describing it in detail, and listening as the elder drew connections between the vision and familiar patterns. In this way, dreams became not only personal experiences, but part of the shared memory of the community. Markets were full of such quiet exchanges. Among the stalls of fruits, fish, and clay pots, conversations wove back and forth about trade, prices, and weather, but also about dreams. A merchant selling grain might mention a dream of overflowing baskets, seeing in it the promise of profit. Another, with worries about sea trade, might recall a dream of wreckage, taking it as a sign to hold back. Though the market was noisy with bargaining, these threads of private belief lingered beneath the surface. Dreams also played a role in health and healing. Illness was often accompanied by visions, and families sought meaning in them. A sick child who dreamed of fresh water was thought to be receiving a sign of recovery. An elder who dreamed of traveling roads might be understood as nearing the end of life's journey. Physicians sometimes took dreams into account when considering treatments, viewing them as clues to the inner workings of the body. When night approached once more, households turned inward again. Oil lamps flickered in courtyards, filling the air with faint smoke and soft light. Children played with small toys before bed, their parents watching with gentle attention. The act of lying down to sleep was not taken lightly. It was another passage, another crossing into a space where dreams might arrive with meaning. The quiet of the house deepened, footsteps faded, and the cycle of sleep and vision began again. In these moments, daily life in ancient Greece was not divided between waking and dreaming, but carried a steady flow between both. Dreams were folded into conversations, decisions, and small acts of devotion. They were at once personal and communal, shaping how people lived and how they understood the unseen forces guiding their world. Night descends again over the Greek world. The day's labor has ended, tools set aside, animals return to their enclosures, and families gathered for simple meals of bread, vegetables, olives, and perhaps a little fish or wine if fortune allows. As shadows lengthen and lamps glow in courtyards, thoughts turn once more towards sleep. For many, this nightly passage into dreams was as significant as the tasks of the day. To sleep was not only to rest, but to enter into a space where gods and spirits might choose to speak. Picture an Athenian household settling into quiet. The courtyard is hushed, save for the faint chirping of crickets outside the walls. A small flame flickers in a clay lamp, its smoke curling into the dark. A mother tucks her children under blankets of woven wool, whispering a prayer that their dreams will be kind. An elder settles near the doorway, watching the stars rise through the opening above. These rituals were not grand, but they carried weight. The people of Greece knew that what arrived in sleep could shape what unfolded when the sun returned. Among ordinary citizens, it was common to seek small signs before drifting off. A gesture of pouring a few drops of wine to the household gods, a whispered word to Hermes, believed to be a messenger of dreams, or to Asclepios, the god of healing, who often appeared in visions. To us, these acts might seem small, but in their world, they were woven deeply into the rhythm of life. The night was not empty. It was alive with possibilities. Children, especially, were taught to pay attention to their dreams. A young boy might wake and describe seeing a bright bird flying across the sky, and his parents would smile, telling him it meant freedom or good fortune. A girl might dream of a path winding into the hills, and her family would remind her to watch carefully for guidance. These interpretations became part of the stories told in the home, adding quiet meaning to each day. Dreams were not always gentle. Nightmares were known and feared. They were considered intrusions, sometimes sent by unfriendly spirits or as warnings of misfortune. When such dreams came, families responded with protective rituals. They might burn incense, pour out water, or recite words to push away the troubling vision. The belief was that if properly respected, such warnings could be turned aside, leaving space for peace. The connection between dreams and health was deeply felt. Illness and sleep were tied together, and recovery was sometimes sought not through medicine alone, but through the guidance of dreams. A sick person might pray before bed, asking for a vision that revealed the path to healing. If a dream came of fresh springs or gentle winds, it was taken as a hopeful sign. If dreams were troubling, it was believed the illness might linger. In this way, each night held both hope and uncertainty. Imagine again the streets of Athens under starlight. The air is still, carrying the faint scent of the sea. Somewhere in a modest home, a family sleeps, breathing quietly. In another house, a man stirs, troubled by visions of war. In yet another, a woman dreams of light falling over the Acropolis and wakes with a sense of calm. Though unseen, dreams stretch across the city like threads in an invisible web, binding individuals together in their shared nightly passage. These experiences were not isolated. They belonged to a broader cultural understanding. Plays performed in theaters sometimes referenced dreams as messages or omens. Poets wove them into verses, describing visions that revealed the favor or disfavor of the gods. Even in the hum of daily life, dreams occupied a place of respect, always lingering near the edges of memory. The sanctity of dreams extended even into law and politics. While most decisions were made through debate, persuasion, and assembly, there are accounts of leaders who privately considered dreams before acting. Though such guidance was not always spoken of openly, it was understood that a dream could weigh as heavily as a friend's advice or a priest's counsel. For ordinary people, this only reinforced the idea that dreams were part of the fabric of society, stretching from the humblest home to the seats of power. Night by night, the cycle repeated itself. Sleep, dream, waking work. The rhythm of life was accompanied always by the rhythm of vision. For the Greeks, to ignore dreams would have been to overlook an essential part of existence. They were not distractions, but whispers of meaning, woven into the pattern of life like the warp and weft of cloth on a loom. As we step back from this picture of daily life, what emerges is a society in which the boundary between the waking and sleeping world was porous, easily crossed. Ordinary people carried dreams with them, held them close, and gave them space to speak. In their small homes, in their marketplaces, in their fields and workshops, dreams were present, always quietly shaping the choices of tomorrow. From the quiet rhythms of ordinary households, let us turn our attention to the life of one particular figure, a man whose thoughts shaped how generations came to understand the nature of dreams. Among the philosophers of ancient Greece, few spent as much careful thought on dreams as Aristotle. Though Plato too reflected on their mysteries, it was Aristotle who approached them with the steady, systematic observation that became his hallmark. His writings allow us to glimpse not only his own views, but also the intellectual atmosphere of his time, where dreams were considered both sacred signs and natural phenomena. Imagine Aristotle as a younger man, walking slowly through the shaded colonnades of the Lyceum in Athens. The air is warm, filled with the scent of flowering plants, and the faint hum of insects drifts among the stone pillars. Students gather around him, scrolls tucked beneath their arms, listening with quiet attention. His voice is calm, deliberate, explaining not only matters of politics, ethics, and science, but also the subtle and elusive subject of dreams. For Aristotle, dreams did not belong entirely to the realm of the divine. He acknowledged the traditions that saw them as messages from the gods, but leaned instead toward natural explanations. In his short treatises on dreams and on divination and sleep, he examined the mechanics of dreaming with the same careful eye he applied to biology or physics. He described dreams as impressions carried by the senses, lingering in the body and reappearing in the mind during sleep. A sound heard faintly before falling asleep might reemerge as part of a dream. A memory, stirred by the body's inner motions, might surface in symbolic form. Yet Aristotle also allowed that dreams could, at times, anticipate events. He explained this not by invoking divine intervention, but by pointing to the subtle ways in which the body perceived things before the conscious mind did. For example, he noted that a dream of fever might precede the appearance of actual illness, because the body sensed its own imbalance before the waking person became aware of it. In this way, dreams were not dismissed as meaningless, but integrated into a broader understanding of human experience. His approach marked a shift. Where ordinary people might see a dream as a direct message from the gods, Aristotle invited them to see it as part of the natural workings of the body and mind. This was not to deny their importance, but to suggest a different way of listening to them. Dreams, in his view, were subtle clues, echoes of perception, and sometimes early warnings. They did not arrive as thunderous commands from Olympus, but as quiet reflections, like ripples across the surface of a still pond. To the students gathered around him, this perspective must have seemed both comforting and challenging. On the one hand, it placed dreams within the grasp of reason, bringing them closer to the familiar world. On the other, it took them partly out of the hands of the gods, asking people to look inward rather than upward for meaning. Still, Aristotle never denied that dreams could hold significance. He merely reframed the source of that significance. Beyond the Lyceum, the life of Aristotle was shaped by movement and change. Born in the city of Stagira, he had traveled widely, studying under Plato in Athens, serving as tutor to the young Alexander the Great, and eventually founding his own school. Through these journeys, his interest in the natural world deepened. Whether examining seashells, mapping stars, or considering the nature of memory, he carried with him a patient curiosity. Dreams fit naturally into this pattern of inquiry, one more puzzle in the great tapestry of existence. Consider the contrast. For the average villager, dreams were woven into daily tasks and family stories. For Aristotle, they became subjects of analysis to be written about and taught, part of a broader philosophy of nature. Yet both perspectives shared a quiet reverence. Whether seen as messages from gods or signals from the body, dreams remained worthy of attention. We might imagine Aristotle retiring after a day of teaching, seated in a shaded courtyard as the evening cooled. A scroll rests on the table beside him, unrolled just enough to reveal lines of careful script. Perhaps he reflects on a dream of his own. Was it a memory resurfacing, a signal from his body, or something more? He does not claim certainty. Instead, he offers possibilities, leaving space for thought. His students, carrying his words back to their homes, likely shared them with friends and families, blending philosophical ideas with household traditions. In this way, Aristotle's reflections on dreams quietly seeped into the wider life of Greece. The presence of such a thinker reminds us that even in a culture steeped in ritual and myth, there was also a steady search for natural explanation. Dreams remained mysterious, but thinkers like Aristotle began to carve paths of reason through them, suggesting that the truth might lie not in divine thunder, but in the gentle whisper of the body itself. Aristotle's reflections on dreams did not appear in isolation. They were part of a wider conversation that stretched across centuries in the Greek world. To better understand this, let us step gently into the broader setting of his time and the ways in which philosophers, poets, and ordinary citizens all engaged with the question of dreams. Before Aristotle, his teacher Plato had also considered dreams with careful attention. In dialogues such as the Republic, Plato described dreams as revealing the hidden parts of the soul. He suggested that while awake, people restrain their impulses with reason and social rules. But in dreams, these restraints fall away. The sleeping mind reveals what is usually concealed: desires, fears, longings that daylight suppresses. For Plato, this was both a warning and an insight. Dreams showed the truth of human nature, but they also demonstrated how easily the mind could wander when freed from the guiding hand of reason. This view contrasted with Aristotle's more measured explanations. Where Plato emphasized the symbolic and the moral, Aristotle leaned toward the physiological. Yet together, their reflections illustrate the layered way Greeks thought about dreams, both as mirrors of the soul and as echoes of the body. Neither perspective canceled the other. Instead, they overlapped, forming a spectrum of interpretation that ordinary people could draw upon. Beyond the philosophers, poets and playwrights also gave voice to dreams. In the tragedies performed before vast audiences in Athens, dreams often appeared as warnings. A queen might recount a vision of ominous signs. A king might wake trembling from a dream of defeat. These dramatic scenes reflected popular belief that dreams could foreshadow events, guiding or cautioning those who paid attention. Audiences, gathered in the stone seats of the theater, would listen in silence, the echo of the actor's voice carrying across the open air. Each listener, no doubt, brought to mind their own experiences of troubling or comforting dreams. In everyday practice, this mixture of views created a culture where dreams were simultaneously sacred, symbolic, and natural. A farmer might consult a neighbor for interpretation, while a philosopher might analyze dreams as fragments of memory. A statesman might quietly consider a dream before making a decision, while a mother comforted her child by weaving a simple explanation into a bedtime story. Each layer of society had its own way of engaging with the unseen world of sleep. Returning to Aristotle himself, we see a thinker who balanced respect for tradition with his natural inclination toward reason. He did not dismiss the popular belief that dreams sometimes revealed future events, but he sought explanations that fit within the framework of nature. When he described how faint impressions in the body might reappear in the mind, he was inviting his students to consider that dreams were not random, but neither were they always divine. They were natural and thus worthy of study. In this, Aristotle's work foreshadowed later approaches. Many centuries afterward, Thinkers in different lands would return to dreams, debating their origins and meanings. Physicians would consider their relationship to health, while philosophers would reflect on their moral weight. The seeds planted in the Greek world, nurtured by men like Aristotle, continued to grow quietly across time. Aristotle's life itself moved in steady rhythm between study and teaching. At the Lyceum, his days were filled with lectures, writings, and observations. He encouraged his students to walk with him as he spoke, the peripatetic style of teaching that became associated with his school. Within those shaded pathways, they discussed not only politics and ethics, but also sleep and dreams, placing them alongside the great questions of existence. To him, no aspect of life was too small to consider. The flutter of a bird's wings, the growth of a plant, the shape of the stars, and the fleeting images of dreams, all were part of a world that deserved thoughtful attention. Imagine standing in the Lyceum during one of these lessons. The stone pavement is warm underfoot, shaded by rows of trees. Scrolls rest in the hands of students, who listen in silence as Aristotle speaks with measured words. There is no rush, no drama, only the calm unfolding of thought. The subject is dreams, and Aristotle's explanation is gentle but firm. What you see at night is not merely the voice of gods, but the reflection of the world within you. Students nod, some furrow brows, others quietly whisper to one another afterward, carrying the discussion into their own homes. In this way, Aristotle's reflections left the walls of his school and mingled with the daily life of Athens. His ideas did not erase the traditional beliefs, but they added a new layer. People might still pour libations to Hermes or Asclepios before bed, but they might also consider whether their own body and mind were the true source of what they saw. A subtle shift, almost invisible, yet significant, was taking place in how Greeks understood themselves. As night fell on Athens and lamps flickered in courtyards, ordinary people dreamed as they always had. Some awoke with awe, others with unease. And somewhere, perhaps in his own home, Aristotle too might have stirred in sleep, seeing images rise and fade. Upon waking, he would not dismiss them. Instead, he would consider them carefully, not as commands from Olympus, but as part of the natural order of the world. A world he sought patiently to understand, piece by piece, dream by dream. In considering Aristotle and his era, it is important to remember that he lived in a world where philosophy was not separated from daily life. Dreams were not merely the subject of abstract speculation. They touched every layer of society. To walk through Athens or any Greek city of the time was to encounter reminders of how deeply dreams were woven into the cultural fabric. Imagine, for a moment, the bustling agora, the marketplace at the center of the city. Merchants call out their wares, citizens gather to discuss politics, and travelers bring news from distant lands. Among the conversations, one might overhear someone recounting a dream from the night before, sharing it with a friend, a family member, or even a stranger. Dreams carried weight. They were part of decision-making, of seeking reassurance, or of interpreting future possibilities. Aristotle's careful reflections existed alongside this lively world of everyday belief. While he sought explanations rooted in nature, Aristotle did not dismiss the long tradition of associating dreams with the divine. In fact, the Greeks had long built sanctuaries dedicated to gods like Asclepios, where people would come seeking healing through sleep. These sacred spaces, known as incubation temples, were places where the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary blurred. Visitors slept in the temple precincts, hoping to receive dreams that revealed cures or guidance. Priests would then interpret the visions, offering advice or rituals based on what had been seen. For Aristotle, such practices were part of the larger landscape of belief, but his writings guided his students toward calmer, more rational explanations. He described how dreams often came from lingering impressions in the body, the warmth of the day, the heaviness of food, the rhythm of breathing. To him, these sensations became shapes in the sleeping mind. He was careful to point out that not every dream was significant, nor did every vision hold a secret message. Most were simply the echo of the body's natural state. Yet it is striking that even as Aristotle wrote with such clarity, he did not deny that some dreams appeared to align with events yet to come. He admitted this possibility, though cautiously, suggesting that sometimes the mind might perceive faint signals or patterns without conscious awareness, which could surface in dreams. In this way, he allowed room for the mystery without surrendering to superstition. This balance between rational explanation and respectful acknowledgement of tradition reflected Aristotle's broader approach to philosophy. He was not a destroyer of old beliefs, but a patient reformer. He sifted through ideas, keeping what could be explained through observation while gently setting aside what could not. His thoughts on dreams illustrate this method perfectly, grounding the phenomena in nature, while leaving open the possibility of mystery. Picture Aristotle in the quiet of evening, seated at a simple wooden table, oil lamps casting flickering light across scrolls. He writes steadily, his stylus scratching across the wax. Outside, Athens grows quiet as citizens prepare for sleep. Within households, families share stories of their dreams before settling down for the night. And there, amid the hush, Aristotle writes of dreams not as oracles from Olympus, but as reflections of the body and mind. His words, calm and measured, will outlast his own lifetime, carried forward through generations. In later centuries, his works on dreams would travel far beyond Greece. Copied, translated, and studied, they became part of the great treasury of knowledge passed to Rome, then to the scholars of the medieval world, and eventually into the hands of early scientists. Each reader encountered his quiet reflections on sleep, recognizing in them a thoughtful attempt to bring order to the fleeting images of the night. But even in Aristotle's own time, his ideas must have felt steadying. In a world where dreams could stir fear or expectation, his explanations offered reassurance. To hear that dreams were shaped by the body, by impressions and memory, was to hear that they were natural and understandable. It was a calm voice amid uncertainty, one that allowed people to rest more easily, knowing that not every vision was a prophecy, not every image a command. And yet, for all his rationality, Aristotle remained human. Like anyone else, he too must have woken from dreams that lingered in the mind. Perhaps he wondered, in quiet moments, whether the gods spoke through such visions after all. His writings suggest restraint, but not dismissal. The possibility of mystery remained, like a faint glimmer on the edge of understanding. Thus, in Aristotle's world, dreams occupied a unique space. They were natural, but also potentially meaningful. They were fragments of the body, yet sometimes felt like whispers of destiny. The balance he struck between these views has echoed across centuries, reminding us that even as knowledge advances, the mystery of dreams never fully fades. As we leave behind the quiet reflections of Aristotle, we now turn toward another aspect of Greek life, one that lived not in the pages of philosophy, but in stone, ritual, and practice. For beyond the studies of scholars, the Greeks sought dreams in sacred places, sanctuaries where sleep itself became a pathway to healing and knowledge. These were the temples of Asclepios, the god of medicine. Here, dreams were not private curiosities, but central to the rhythms of health, faith, and hope. The most famous of these sites was at Epidaurus, a sanctuary nestled in the Peloponnesian landscape. Pilgrims came from across the Greek world to walk its colonnades, breathe its mountain air, and prepare themselves for nights of sacred rest. They came in search of relief, from illness, from pain, from uncertainty. Some carried offerings of small clay, figurines shaped like the body parts they wished to heal, an arm, a leg, an eye. Others brought inscriptions, prayers carved into stone. All came with the same hope, that in sleep, the god would send a dream carrying guidance or cure. The practice was known as incubation. Pilgrims would bathe, often in cool spring water, purifying themselves before entering the abaton, the sleeping hall. This was a long, Simple structure, its stone walls enclosing rows of resting places. The atmosphere was hushed, reverent. Imagine yourself lying on a stone bench there, surrounded by others who have also come to seek the god's voice. The air is cool, touched by the scent of oil lamps. Priests move quietly among the sleepers, ensuring order, ready to record the dreams that will be told in the morning. For the Greeks, these dreams were not random. They were messages sent by Asclepios himself. A dream might reveal the cure directly, showing an image of the god applying medicine or performing a procedure. At other times, the dream was more symbolic, requiring interpretation by the priests. Either way, the act of dreaming in this sacred space carried authority. The dream was not questioned. It was received, honored, and acted upon. Archaeology has preserved traces of this world. At Epidaurus, carved inscriptions still survive, recounting the cures said to have taken place. One tells a man who came blind in one eye and left seeing clearly after the god appeared to him in sleep. Another describes a woman unable to conceive who dreamt of Asclepios touching her belly and later bore child. These accounts, carved in stone, serve not only as records, but as testimonies to inspire faith in future pilgrims. The sanctuary itself was expansive. Beyond the abaton, visitors found a theater, a stadium, baths, and altars. Healing here was not only about the dream, but about the entire experience, physical, spiritual, and communal. Pilgrims were part of a shared journey, joining countless others across generations who sought comfort in the same sacred sleep. To picture Epidaurus today is to see ruins of graceful columns and foundations scattered under the Greek sky. Yet in its time, the place pulsed with life. The murmur of pilgrims' voices, the ritual songs of priests, the sound of sandals on stone floors, all filled the sanctuary. At night, when the abaton was full of sleeping figures, the silence was deep, punctuated only by the flicker of oil lamps and the rustle of dreams taking shape. This practice of dream incubation was not unique to Epidaurus. Other sanctuaries, such as those at Kos and Pergamon, offered similar rites. Together, they formed a network of healing centers where sleep was transformed into a bridge between the mortal and the divine. Across the Greek world, men and women who might otherwise have lived with pain or uncertainty placed their trust in these rituals. It is striking how the practice blended practical and mystical elements. Bathing, exercise, and rest all contributed to physical health, while the belief in divine dreams offered psychological reassurance. In this way, incubation was both medical and spiritual, soothing body and mind alike. For many, the cure may have come as much from the peace of the sanctuary and the strength of belief as from any divine intervention. To walk among the ruins today is to sense that calm. The stones are weathered, the colonnades incomplete, yet the layout still whispers of order and purpose. The abaton, though silent, seems to hold the memory of countless sleepers who once placed their trust in the god of healing. The theater still echoes faintly when the wind moves through it, reminding visitors that this was a place where life and ritual intertwined. So when we consider Greek beliefs about dreams, we must remember these sanctuaries. They were more than background. They were living expressions of faith. Here, dreams were not private or uncertain. They were sacred, communal, and central to the rhythm of health. The sanctuaries of Asclepios remind us that the Greeks sought meaning in dreams not only for healing, but also for guidance in broader aspects of life. To them, sleep could serve as a threshold, a quiet crossing where ordinary concerns met the whispers of the divine. This belief was not confined to temples alone. It spilled outward into the rhythms of travel, war, and civic decision-making. Archaeological evidence and written accounts together allow us to glimpse just how far-reaching these practices were. One striking discovery comes from inscriptions found at sanctuaries and city sites across the Greek world. These records, often carved on stone tablets, serve as both testimony and instruction. Some recount the cures achieved through dreams, while others preserve stories of guidance for journeys, trade, or family life. Such inscriptions tell us that dreams were not seen as fleeting or private, but as communal, worthy of being set down in enduring form. They were reminders that the gods spoke not only through oracles at Delphi or omens in the sky, but also through the quiet of night. In Homer's epics, which form the shared cultural memory of the Greeks, dreams also carried authority. In the Iliad, dreams are sent by gods to influence mortal decisions. Though these poems belong to a legendary past, their imagery shaped how later Greeks imagined the relationship between dreaming and divine will. To fall asleep was to open oneself to the possibility of guidance or warning, a thought that could be both comforting and unsettling. Archaeology adds another dimension. Excavations at sites like Epidaurus and Pergamon reveal not only the Abaton halls, but also the broader infrastructure that surrounded them. Theaters, gymnasiums, baths, and dining areas were integral parts of the sanctuaries. This suggests that incubation was embedded in a wider system of wellness, where the body was strengthened through exercise and ritual cleansing. The mind was uplifted by music and drama, and sleep became the moment where all these practices converged. The dream, in this sense, was the culmination of a carefully prepared experience. Imagine, for a moment, a pilgrim's journey to Pergamon. The city rises on a hill, with terraces and temples layered against the sky. As the visitor approaches, he sees colonnades, fountains, and shrines, each designed to inspire reverence and calm. After purifying himself, he enters the Abaton, where dozens of others lie resting. In the stillness, he drifts into sleep. In his dream, Asclepios appears, not in thunder or brilliance, but in a quiet image, perhaps offering a bowl of water or touching a part of his body in need of healing. The dream is short, but upon waking, he recounts it to a priest. The priest interprets it, prescribes a ritual or treatment, and the man leaves believing he's been touched by the god. Whether his body truly heals or not, the peace of mind and sense of connection remain. This process reveals something important. Dreams were not isolated events, but parts of carefully constructed cultural rituals. Archaeology shows us the architecture. Inscriptions preserve the words. Literature conveys the beliefs. Together, they allow us to reconstruct how dreams functioned as a living practice in Greek life. It is worth noting, too, that dream incubation had a social dimension. Those who traveled to sanctuaries did so not alone, but among crowds of other seekers. A visitor's experience was shared, reinforced by the testimony of others, by the stories carved in stone, and by the collective trust placed in the God of healing. In this way, dreams became part of a communal fabric, woven into festivals, prayers, and civic pride. Modern visitors walking among these ruins might feel a stillness, as though the stones remember. The Abaton may lie roofless, its benches broken, but the idea of dream-seeking lingers. Tourists trace the same paths once walked by pilgrims, climbing steps smoothed by centuries of feet. The air carries the same sense of earth and pine. In the quiet of evening, one can almost imagine the sanctuary alive again. Priests tending lamps, the rustle of robes, the hushed sound of pilgrims whispering their dreams. Through these remnants, archaeological fragments, carved testimonies, literary echoes, we see that Greek beliefs about dreams were neither fanciful nor marginal. They were central, enacted in stone and ritual, lived by countless ordinary people. To the Greeks, dreams were not simply stories of the night. They were threads connecting the human to the divine, the fragile body to the possibility of healing, the uncertain mind to the guidance of gods. Having explored the sanctuaries where dreams were sought for healing and guidance, we can look more closely at the deeper cultural and symbolic meaning of these practices. To the Greeks, dreams were not only personal experiences, but part of a shared language of symbols, rituals, and traditions. They carried a weight that extended into art, literature, and even civic identity. By piecing together evidence from archaeology, inscriptions, and surviving texts, we can glimpse how dreams were woven into the broader fabric of Greek thought. One remarkable source for understanding this world comes from inscriptions at Epidaurus and other sanctuaries. These carved records preserve stories of healing through dreams in astonishing detail. Some describe the god appearing directly to the dreamer, applying remedies or performing surgical acts with divine precision. Others recount symbolic visions that priests interpreted as instructions for treatment, sometimes involving simple remedies, sometimes elaborate rituals. These stories were preserved not only as private memories, but as public declarations of the god's power. To see such inscriptions was to be reminded that countless others before you had been healed by the same divine touch. Archaeology also reveals the careful design of these sanctuaries. At Epidaurus, for example, the abaton was constructed with a deliberate orientation, aligned to catch certain breezes and light. The architecture itself seems to have contributed to the experience, creating a sense of calm conducive to sleep and reverie. Nearby theaters and gymnasiums reinforce the connection between physical health, emotional balance, and spiritual practice. To the Greeks, healing was never one-dimensional. It was a holistic process, and dreams were at its very heart. The cultural imagination of dreams extended into mythology as well. In Greek myth, dreams could be personified as spirits. The Oneiroi were thought to be the children of night, dark-winged beings who carried visions to sleeping mortals. Among them, Morpheus was said to shape dreams of human figures, while Phantasos brought images of landscapes and objects. This mythological framing shows how the Greeks sought to explain the strangeness of dreams, by imagining them as messengers sent from beyond the waking world. This belief in dreams as messages was not limited to healing sanctuaries or poetic myth. It permeated everyday life. Ancient sources tell us that generals sometimes consulted dreams before campaigns, and city leaders interpreted them when faced with uncertainty. The historian Herodotus recounts how kings and rulers were swayed by visions in the night, shaping decisions that affected thousands of lives. To the Greeks, dreams could hold consequences not only for individuals, but for entire communities. What stands out, however, is the calm coexistence of multiple interpretations. On one hand, philosophers like Aristotle sought natural explanations, grounding dreams in the body. On the other, sanctuaries like Epidaurus embodied the sacred and divine aspect of dreaming. Between these poles, ordinary people moved fluidly, embracing both views without contradiction. Dreams could be natural echoes of daily life and divine messages at the same time. This flexibility made them deeply integrated into Greek culture. If you imagine yourself as a pilgrim in this world, the experience would be layered. You would prepare by bathing in cool water, perhaps offering a small votive gift shaped like the part of your body that ailed you. You would walk along colonnades shaded by marble columns, the air filled with the faint smell of incense. As night fell, you would lie among others in the abaton, oil lamps flickering overhead. Sleep would come slowly, with a murmur of distant voices fading into silence. Then, in dreams, images might appear, soft, shifting, strange. Whether you awoke with a clear vision of the god, or with only fragments of imagery, you would rise with the knowledge that your dream mattered, that it carried meaning in this sacred setting. Today, archaeologists sift through these sites with patient care. They uncover fragments of pottery, small votive offerings, and foundations of once grand halls. Each piece helps to reconstruct not only the architecture, but the atmosphere of dream incubation. The discoveries remind us that dreams were not abstract to the Greeks. They were lived experiences sought deliberately in stone-built sanctuaries, enacted with ritual, and remembered through inscription. Standing among the ruins now, you may sense a continuity. The stones are silent, but the questions remain. Do dreams reveal something beyond ourselves? Or are they only reflections of our inner world? The Greeks lived with both answers, and in doing so, they gave dreams a place of honor in their lives. Their sanctuaries remind us that sleep was never simply an end to the day, but an opening to something more, a space where the human and the divine might meet in quiet visions. In this way, Greek beliefs about dreams invite us not only to study history, but to reflect on our own experiences of sleep. Even now, we wake sometimes with a dream that lingers, carrying a sense of importance or mystery. Perhaps it is only memory and imagination, or perhaps it is something more. The Greeks would have nodded knowingly at that uncertainty, for to them, dreams were always more than they seemed. So far, we have drifted through the daily experiences of Greek dreamers, through the thoughts of philosophers, and through the sanctuaries where healing sleep was sought. Yet to understand the full picture of Greek beliefs about dreams, we must also look toward the world of the elite, those whose lives were marked by power, influence, and authority. For while dreams touched the lives of common farmers, artisans, and pilgrims, they carried particular weight when experienced by generals, kings, and rulers. A dream in the home of a farmer might shape a family decision. A dream in the palace of a king could alter the course of a war. Greek literature preserves several striking accounts of dreams that were said to influence the powerful. Herodotus, the historian of the 5th century BCE, recounts many such stories. One famous example involves Xerxes, the Persian king who led the invasion of Greece. Before launching his campaign, Xerxes was said to have been troubled by dreams. At first, he hesitated to proceed with the invasion, but then he claimed to see a dream figure urging him forward, insisting that he must continue. For Xerxes, these dreams became part of his justification for war. Though he was a foreign ruler, the story reflects the Greek conviction that even great kings were not free from the influence of visions in the night. Closer to home, Greek leaders too paid heed to dreams. Generals often took them as signs of victory or warning. A commander preparing for battle might recount his dreams to his soldiers, framing them as messages from the gods that inspired courage or caution. The belief that divine guidance could arrive through sleep lent a weight of authority to the decisions of leaders. Even if soldiers felt fear, the assurance that their general had seen a favorable dream could steady their resolve. Archaeology cannot always capture these intimate moments of vision, but inscriptions and texts give us glimpses of how seriously they were taken. In some cases, entire campaigns were delayed because of unfavorable omens or dreams. In others, rulers performed rituals to appease gods believed to have spoken through sleep. The dream, in such contexts, was never a trivial matter. It was woven into the strategies of statesmen and warriors alike. Yet there was also skepticism. Not everyone accepted dreams at face value, especially among the educated elite. Writers like Aristotle sought natural explanations, and others warned against placing too much trust in visions of the night. Still, the persistence of dream accounts in historical records suggests that even skeptics could not ignore their cultural power. A well-timed dream could sway opinion, offering divine legitimacy to decisions already contemplated. The contrast between common dreamers and the elite reveals much about Greek society. For the ordinary person, a dream might offer hope of healing or reassurance in daily struggles. For the elite, dreams were part of the stage of politics and warfare. Their dreams were remembered, recorded, and retold because they carried consequences beyond the individual. They could affect not just one life, but the lives of many. Imagine, for a moment, a general lying awake in the stillness before a great battle. The camp is quiet, fires burning low, soldiers resting uneasily. The general finally drifts into sleep and dreams of a god appearing in radiant form, promising victory. When dawn comes, he tells the dream to his men. Their fear lifts, replaced by belief that the gods favor them. In truth, the battle will be decided by strategy, strength, and chance. But in that moment, the dream has power. It changes how the soldiers see themselves, how they fight, how they endure. This dual role of dreams, both personal and political, shows their complexity in Greek culture. They were intimate, fleeting images that arose in the silence of night. Yet they were also public, retold, and inscribed, used to shape decisions and inspire action. Whether whispered in households or proclaimed in assemblies, dreams moved through society as both private mysteries and public tools. Today, when we read these accounts, we may find ourselves wondering how much was belief, how much was strategy, and how much was the human need to find meaning in uncertainty. Perhaps leaders truly felt guided by their dreams. Perhaps they used them deliberately, framing their choices with divine approval. Either way, the result was the same. Dreams held sway, and their influence touched not only the sleeper, but the entire community. Among the most fascinating aspects of elite dream culture in ancient Greece was the way dreams became tools for authority. For rulers, generals, and influential thinkers, dreams could be more than private experiences. They could serve as instruments of persuasion, as if the gods themselves had endorsed a decision. A clever leader might present a dream to justify his choice, framing it not as his own will, but as divine instruction. In a society where the gods were believed to watch and guide human affairs, such claims carried enormous weight. Consider the example of Alexander the Great. Ancient sources, written with a mix of admiration and myth-making, tell us that Alexander experienced dreams that shaped his destiny. One account describes him dreaming of a satyr before his conquest of Tyre. Interpreters, skilled in the art of decoding symbols, broke the dream into syllables, satyros, which they understood as Tyre is thine. With that interpretation, a fleeting image in Alexander's sleep became a prophecy of victory. Whether or not the dream occurred exactly as recorded is beside the point. What matters is that his followers believed it, and that belief shaped how they marched into battle. This blending of personal vision and public storytelling highlights the delicate interplay between faith and politics. Dreams could be retold in ways that inspired confidence, reassured allies, or intimidated rivals. For a king or general, this was a form of soft power, a subtle but effective way of strengthening his position without raising a sword. When a leader declared that a god had visited him in the night, people listened. Even skeptics hesitated to dismiss the possibility outright, for who could claim certainty about the secret language of the divine? Inscriptions from sanctuaries, particularly those devoted to Asclepius, also reveal that elite individuals participated in dream rituals much like common folk. Wealthy patrons would dedicate offerings, sometimes lavish, after experiencing healing dreams. Their names were etched into stone, immortalized alongside the records of miraculous cures. These inscriptions served dual purposes. They honored the god, and they advertised the prestige of the dreamer. To have one's healing dream recorded in marble was both a personal testimony and a public declaration of divine favor. Yet, while common dreamers sought relief from illness or reassurance in daily struggles, elite dreamers operated in a wider sphere. Their visions were not only for themselves, but for the community, the army, or even the empire. A dream promising victory or warning against hubris could ripple outward, influencing thousands of lives. The voice of one sleeper could shape the course of history. At the same time, philosophers and skeptics kept alive a parallel conversation. Were dreams truly divine, or were they illusions born of the mind? Thinkers like Aristotle insisted that dreams did not come from gods but from natural processes. Others, like the physician Galen centuries later, acknowledged the physiological causes of dreams, but still considered them potentially diagnostic, a way to understand the body's hidden state. This tension between belief and doubt gave Greek dream culture its depth. Dreams were never dismissed outright, but neither were they immune to scrutiny. Still, the sheer persistence of dream stories in Greek literature and inscriptions tells us how deeply they resonated. Imagine standing in a crowded marketplace in Athens, hearing news that a general had dreamed of Nike, the goddess of victory, stretching her wings above him. For many, this was more than gossip. It was reassurance that the gods watched over their city. The story would pass from person to person, growing in weight, until it shaped the mood of an entire crowd. Even those who doubted might feel a spark of unease, wondering, what if it is true? Dreams, then, occupied a curious place in elite society. They were private experiences, fragile and fleeting, yet they could be magnified into instruments of power. They were moments of vulnerability. After all, anyone could dream. Yet they became woven into the fabric of public life. The elite dreamer was both sleeper and storyteller, recipient and interpreter, believer and strategist. In their hands, a vision of the night became a tool for shaping the day. This duality reminds us that the ancient Greek world was one where lines blurred easily between divine and human, private and public, belief and strategy. Dreams existed in this liminal space where the seen and unseen intertwined. Whether whispered in the quiet of a home or proclaimed before an army, they mattered. They had weight. They carried meaning, not only for the dreamer, but for all who listened. As we approach the final layer of our journey through dreams in ancient Greece, it is worth slowing down to consider how these experiences reflected broader contrasts within society. Dreams, though deeply personal, became mirrors of social order, highlighting the differences between classes, between men and women, between city dwellers and those living at the margins of the Greek world. In their own way, these night visions created a map of society itself, one that stretched from the quiet corners of the household to the grand halls of kings. For the wealthy and powerful, dreams could be opportunities to command attention, to frame their status as aligned with the gods. A ruler's dream was more than a fleeting thought. It was a declaration of destiny. Stories of kings dreaming of victory or of philosophers interpreting their visions circulated widely, sometimes preserved in polished prose that elevated the dream into a kind of miniature myth. These accounts reinforced the idea that the gods cared more for those in high positions, that divine voices spoke most clearly to those who led. By contrast, the dreams of ordinary people were rarely written down unless they intersected with sacred ritual. A farmer who dreamt of rain might feel reassured when his crops flourished, but his dream, unless tied to a healing sanctuary or a public inscription, would vanish into the ether, carried only in memory or conversation. Yet this does not mean they were less important. For these dreamers, the nightly visions offered quiet comfort, a sense that the hardships of life were noticed by powers greater than themselves. While elite dreams might inspire armies, common dreams help sustain individuals through daily toil. The gender dimension of dreams also deserves mention. In many myths and historical anecdotes, women's dreams are treated as deeply symbolic, often tied to fertility, family, and the well-being of the household. One famous example is the dream of Queen Olympias, Alexander the Great's mother, who supposedly dreamed of a thunderbolt striking her womb, a vision later interpreted as the divine conception of her son. Such stories suggest that women's dreams were often linked to the destiny of others, particularly men of power. In this way, the dreams of women could be framed as prophetic but were rarely allowed to stand on their own terms. They became threads woven into larger narratives centered on dynasties and male achievement. Still, women also participated directly in dream rituals, particularly in the healing practices of sanctuaries. Inscriptions from Epidaurus record the names of women who sought divine aid, offering gratitude for cures received in dreams. Their participation reminds us that, although their public voice may have been limited, their dream lives were as vivid and as meaningful as those of any statesman or general. Behind the inscriptions, one can almost imagine women recounting their visions by the flicker of lamplight, passing down the memory of divine encounters within their families. Dreams also bridge the gap between city and countryside. In bustling Athens, the interpretation of dreams could become a public affair tied to debates about policy, law, or military campaigns. In rural villages, however, the same practice remained intimate, bound up with concerns about harvests, animals, or local spirits. Yet the framework of belief was shared. Both farmer and philosopher looked for meaning in the shapes that drifted through sleep, convinced that these fleeting visions mattered. These layers of difference, class, gender, geography, show us that dream culture in ancient Greece was not uniform. Instead, it was like a woven fabric, with bright threads of elite proclamations crossing softer strands of private reassurance. Each dream mattered within its own sphere, whether it reached the ears of a king or lingered only in the quiet of a home. Together, they reveal a society deeply invested in the belief that the night spoke to the day, and that human lives unfolded under the watchful gaze of unseen powers. To reflect on this is to recognize how fragile and yet how enduring dreams can be. They vanish at dawn, dissolving as quickly as mist, and yet they leave behind traces. Inscriptions, myths, stories whispered from parent to child. Even today, we can read these traces and feel a distant connection to those who lived millennia ago. Their fears, their hopes, their desire to find meaning in the restless theater of sleep all remain familiar. As we prepare to leave this final segment, picture once more the quiet rhythm of Greek life. Imagine the soft glow of an oil lamp fading in a stone house, the slow hush of waves on the shore of a distant polis, and within those spaces, countless dreamers slipping into the uncertain landscape of sleep. Some would awaken to tell of divine visitations. Others would forget their visions by morning. Yet all shared in the fragile mystery of the dream world, a world where the boundaries between mortal and divine, between ordinary and extraordinary, grew porous and uncertain. And so, as our journey through the strange beliefs about dreams in ancient Greece comes to an end, we find ourselves returning to the present moment, carrying with us the gentle echoes of the past. Across these hours, we have walked the winding paths of daily life, explored the dreams of philosophers and generals, uncovered rituals of healing, and contrasted the visions of the powerful with the quiet hopes of ordinary men and women. If there is one thing these stories reveal, it is the enduring human desire to find meaning in the fleeting world of sleep. Dreams, in their fragile beauty, connect us across time. They are as old as humanity itself, as familiar to us now as they were to those who lay under the stars of ancient Greece. A farmer listening for omens in the rustle of the night, a queen pondering the strange symbols of her visions, a soldier reassured by the promise of victory in sleep. All were guided by the same wonder that lingers in us when we wake and recall the mysterious landscapes of the night. As you lie here now, perhaps with your eyes closed, listening to the soft rhythm of these words, you might notice how similar you are to those distant dreamers. They too sought rest, reassurance, and meaning in the quiet hours. They too let their thoughts drift on the uncertain currents of sleep. Their world was filled with hardship, uncertainty, and the presence of unseen powers. Yet in their dreams, they found a kind of comfort, a reminder that the night itself could whisper guidance. Let this reflection ease you further into rest. Let it remind you that even across the centuries, human beings have always searched for peace at the edge of sleep. And while the Greeks imagined gods speaking in their visions, you may find a different kind of peace in the simple act of closing your eyes and letting go of the day. If this calm storytelling has helped you tonight, if these quiet histories have guided you toward relaxation or sleep, feel free to like this video and subscribe to the channel, only if it truly brings you peace. And if you would like, share in the comments where you're listening from and what time of night it is. It is strangely comforting to know who else is out there, drifting off to the same soft histories across different places and hours. So, take one last deep breath. Feel the weight of the day slipping away. The voices of the ancient world grow faint, fading like dreams themselves. Rest now, knowing that the stories of the past have kept you company, steady and calm, guiding you gently toward sleep. May the night ahead be peaceful, and may your dreams, when they come, be kind.